Let me start. Okay, today is about testing intervals, and I want to give you a super simple one right off the bat. Imagine that you've got a quadratic and you've already factored it and it looked like this, and you set it compared to 0. If there was a number over here, you'd have to get rid of it, but of course we're going to set it less than or equal to 0. Everybody make that equation and then make a number line underneath it. What are the two key spots on the number line? And please don't say -1, as that's not correct. What are the two key spots on the number line? Hennon, you're smart. You can do this. Two key spots.
-3 and 1.
-3 and 1. You are correct, sir. They're the things that make it equal 0. Now, I'm going to circle those spots. I always circle the key spots, but sometimes I fill it in and sometimes I don't. Michael, do you know how I know whether to fill it in or not?
It equals 2.
Since it says equal to, what am I going to do? I'm going to fill it in. Because these things make it equal 0. So if I stuck in a 1, do you get, doesn't even matter what the left equation or the left side comes out to. The right side comes out to 0. And 0 times anything is equal to 0. That's why an or equal to there means you fill it in. Okay, now this is the testing intervals part. Do you get, there's a 2 up here, there's a 0 in here somewhere, and there's a -4 down here. When you're testing the intervals, you're trying to see whether that 2 will work. What do I mean by work? That means if I stick the 2 in, will this thing stay less than or equal to 0? All right, everybody figure out if 2 works, if 0 works, and if -4 works, and then fill in the area that works. Like if you think this area works, you'd highlight it from 1 to infinity, you know, if you think that works. All right, I'm going to pause for a second while you try to test these intervals. If I could start with that 2, I'm going to put it in here and I get 2 minus 1 and 3 plus 2. That makes 5 and 1, and that's 5 times 1 is 5. Is 5 less than 0? No, that one's out. Do you get how that didn't work over there? Okay. Now, that was the slow way. Did you guys do it the slow way or the fast way? Well, let me show you both ways. Most kids would like to know the fast way since you're going to have to test multiple intervals on today's homework and on the test. So let me show you the fast way to test 0. You put in 0, server. Well, yeah, that's true, but here's the fast way to do it. If I put in a 0 here and I put in a 0 here, because I set it equal to 0, all that matters is this going to come out positive or negative? Is this going to come out positive or negative? And therefore, is the answer going to come out positive or negative? Do you get it's either less than 0, or it's greater than 0, or it's equal to 0? So, watch. If I put in 0, I get negative. If I put in 0, I get positive. And I don't even care that it's +4, because a negative times a positive makes a negative, which has to be less than 0. Do you see how that worked? This area worked. How many of you knew that the middle zone worked? Okay, good. But I bet you thought you had to figure out exactly what it was. You don't. Let me show you what I mean. Let's say I put in, instead of -4, let's say I put in -20. Why would you do that? Because look, it'll pretty quickly become apparent that this part would be negative. -20 plus 3 has got to be negative, right? And -20 goes in here, and I'm for sure going to have a negative answer. Do you get a negative times a negative makes a positive, which is not less than 0. So it's out. That's called sign testing. Okay? Let's do that one more time. x plus 4, x minus 2. And my question is, use sign testing to see when is this greater or equal to 0. Pausing for a second. I'll ask you to compare with the kid next to you in a moment. All right. Here's how this would go. First up, it's -4 and +2, and you circle them and you fill them in. Why do I fill them in? Kira, do you know why I fill them in? All right. And since the sign is or equal to, you fill them in. Now, I have a follow-up question. I just tried to show you how you don't really need to find the exact answer. So I'm going to challenge you with that. Let's say I put in 10. What would I do? So what would you say this is? And don't say 8. Positive. And what would this come out to? And so therefore you know that the answer would be positive. And is that bigger than 0? So it worked. Raise your hand if you highlighted the right side. Okay, Cal, what usually then also works?
-10.
Yeah, like a big negative number. And that would come out to, Cal, walk me through it.
Negative.
A neg
And negative.
times an egg. And what's a neg times an egg?
Positive.
Positives. And are they bigger than 0? So that worked. Now, I don't think I've ever seen it where you test all the intervals and it works. So I'm assuming that this doesn't work, but I would still test a number. I'm going to pick the number 0. And when I put in 0, I would get a -2 and a 4. Positive times a negative makes a negative. Is a negative bigger than 0? No, so that's out. Yay, it worked just like I thought. Raise your hand if you had that one right. Cool. And that's the main thing for today. So let's see if we can apply it. All right, without any help, you should be able to find the vertex and the x-intercepts. What? That's not the same as that we just did. You're right, because this problem doesn't have a less than or equal to. It's just equal to. So this must come back to what I taught you yesterday, which is just some formulas involved with the quadratics. See if you remember them. Try to answer number 1 and number 2. Remember, this is not a point. That's an interval. So when you find your XY chart, 1, 3 is not one of the points. All right, try to answer those 2 questions. I'm going to pause for a second while you do so. X equals -b over 2a. I threw in the x equals part because I think it's important to realize the number you get is the x value of the vertex. So what was that actually? Yep. Because you had -6 divided by 2 makes -3. And then how do you find the y value for that? Nora, do you know how to do that? Yep. -3 squared plus 6 times -3 and then plus 5. And what did you guys get for that? -4. Then -3, -4 is the vertex. All right. Now, one thing I haven't done yet that I often end up doing is factoring. Because, you know, they always say if you can factor it, you should. At least that's what I always say. Did I factor that properly? Cool. And then why am I setting it equal to 0? Because I want the x-intercepts, which is where y is 0. See? That's why I set it equal to 0. And then I've got 2 answers, -1 and -5. And Mr. Server cries a little bit and marks it wrong because that's not an okay way to write your answers. You got 2 choices. You could either say x equals this and x equals that, or since they're x-intercepts, their y is 0. You could have said -5 comma 0, and you could have said -1 comma 0. X-intercepts, vertex. You guys good with that? Okay. Now, the problem that we just were doing would have been, what if we took the same problem, but we said less than or equal to 0? Now, let's not even do it. You would still have factored it. You would have got 2 key points, -5, -1, and then you would have tested intervals. You get that? Okay. Now, let's do this one. This 1 and this 3 were the x values. 15-minute warning. The 1 and the 3 are x values. So then what's the y value for them? Kira, did you find a point? Okay, stick in the 1, and I'll ask you what that comes out to. Michael, did you find the 3 yet?
The 3,
Bet you can do it.
3 would be 27 minus 9, which is 18 plus 4, 22.
Perfect. And Kira, what'd you get for the 1?
4.
Perfect. Now, I've got 2 points. Mirtha, you bet you know how to find slope.
Yeah, so I would subtract 4 from 22.
You are correct. All right. And what's that? And then what is that? The number of sheep? Or what is it? It's the slope. Now, they didn't give it context, but that could have been like, that's how many sheep per hour walk down the path. Or something like that. So these can have units. This didn't in this problem, but this average slope came out to 9. You with me so far? Okay. Now let's look at this one. Now on this one, you could graph, but I really don't want to. Like, it says to find these answers analytically. It doesn't specifically say that I have to do it with graphing. It says check it with a graph. But why don't I want to graph so badly? This is problem 2, so I'm just scribbling out the 2. I'd have to graph that. That's not very fun. And then I'd have to graph this, and I'd have to figure out where those 2 equations, where the one is above the other one. And that's just not fun at all. So let's just do it the normal way. I'm going to ask everybody to start by subtracting 4 from both sides. Gio, what do I do to both sides now?
Now you divide by -3.
Correct. And then can you tell me what happens because of that?
The signs switch.
Yes. So now I have 2x plus 1 in the bars, absolute value, less than 2. That leads us to what I call the splits. Oscar, can you do the splits?
Yeah,
At least when it comes to math?
on one side, it's 2x plus 1 is greater than 2,
Start with less than.
less than, sorry, yeah.
You start with exactly what you see right here, and then the other one is the one that's all different.
Yeah, then it's 2x plus 1 is greater than negative.
Greater than -2. Very good. And now everybody solve that out. And on this kind, you don't have to test intervals. Do you get, we knew the signs. We knew it was less than and a greater than, and that's going to help a lot. No testing intervals needed. Now, just because interval testing isn't needed doesn't mean that you can't test an interval. I just want to show you what I mean. Do you get right now, it looks like I should not like shade in the right side. So I'm going to just take the number 1, which would be over there, you know, past 1/2, you'd find 1. I'm going to go stick 1 in the original equation. And I just want to make sure that it doesn't work because I'm not shading that area. So I'm just going to check a 1. 2 times 1 is 2 plus 1 is 3. Absolute value of that is 3. Times by negative 3 makes negative 9. 4 minus 9, negative 5. Is negative 5 bigger than negative 2? No, it's not. But that's tricky because you had to know, like, you know, negative 5 and negative 2, that can be confusing. Here's where 0 is. Here's where negative 2 is. I like to think, because I'm a Minnesotan, I understand negative numbers better than people from down south because we understand negative temperatures. We deal with them in the winter all the time. So I know that this one's warmer and therefore bigger than negative 5. So it said negative 5 is greater than negative 2, and that's wrong. So I just am showing you that you can still test intervals on this kind. I just think it's long and painful. And therefore, I'd be able to do my absolute value kind like that. Raise your hand if you want an absolute value question on your next test because you feel like you get that kind. All right, good. Next. This is different. And the key is going to be if you know how to start. Can anybody tell me on number 1, how should I start? Since only one person seems to know, everybody right now, set equal to 0. That's how you always start with quadratics. Set them equal to 0. And then, if you can, what? Factor it, you should. All right, go ahead and set it equal to 0. Now, there's two lines of thinking on this. Some people think, I'm going to subtract 2x squared from both sides. But the problem is, it's not wrong. The problem is you can't factor this. You might be like, what do you mean you can't factor it? Well, you got to factor out the negative 1 first before you even factor it. So I wouldn't have done it that way. I would have moved everything to the left side. And then I would have had 2x squared plus x minus 3 is less than or equal to 0. I think that would have been easier because this one factors right away and you don't have to worry about factoring out a negative. 2x and x. Owen, do you know how to factor it? Okay, I'll let you catch up. Elle, do you know how to factor it? All right, I'm going to have people do this in little parts. Elle, can you tell me what signs I should use? Should I use a plus and a plus? Should I use a plus and a minus? Should I use a minus and a minus?
Plus and a minus.
Yep. So everybody go ahead and put in the plus and the minus. I know you don't know if they're in the right spots. We'll figure that out later. Hennon, what two numbers have to multiply here?
3 and negative 1.
A 3 and a 1. And you say 3 and the negative 1. I'm going to double check you. That and that, do they really make positive x? Yes, they do. So you got it. Nice job. Okay. So then why did we do all of that? Because now we found the two key points. One of them is negative 3 over 2. I'm doing this because I can do this in my head. If you can't, then set 2x plus 3 equals 0 and solve it. That'll give you the negative 3 over 2. And then this one is positive 1, and I circle them. Tadros, am I going to fill those circles in or not? Why? How do you know?
It's or equal to.
Because it's an or equal to sign. Very good. Okay. Now, I got to test intervals. Remember that thing about how I don't need the exact answer. I just need to know if it comes out positive or negative. Hennon, can you tell me how to do that? So like testing the number 8. How would you do that?
I would go to the 2x plus 3 and stuff, and then I'd put,
And you're not going to find the exact answer, though. What are you going to find?
if it's positive or negative,
So what's the first parenthesis here?
positive,
And the second parenthesis?
positive,
And that makes a?
positive,
Positives are less than 0. True or false?
false.
Positives are not less than 0, so that's out. And my suspicion is this is going to work, and then the other end's not going to work. Because usually it's either the inside one or the outside 2. But just to be sure, Michael, tell me how to test the number down here.
On this number down there, just test -10.
I like it, -10. Why'd you pick such a big number? Because we're just doing a positive or negative test. Okay, so we're going to put in a -10 here and here, and what? Talk me through it.
Okay, so you're going to get negative on the left,
This will be neg.
and then on the right, you'll get negative.
Neg. What's a neg times a neg?
It's positive.
Is positives less than 0?
No.
Nope. So we know that didn't work. And it is the inside ones. That was what I was supposed to teach you today. And I feel like you've got it. All right. So this is just describing that process again. Notice their first step. Set one side equal to 0. And figure out the signs of the outputs. It does say right answer in interval notation. I'm fine with leaving your answer in graph notation. So like on that last problem where we had our two things circled and it was what was in between them. I'm fine with you leaving your answer on a number line. That's one of the approved notations. Could you change it though? Yeah, it was like -3/2 and -1, I think. No, +1? What were the two roots? +1 for the zeros. Okay, then you can finish off like they said by writing it this way. But if you left it this way, unless the directions say otherwise, I'm fine with number line notation. Okay. Let's just do this one. And if you understand this, I'm wrong. We shouldn't do that one. Okay, actually, we are going to do this one. My bad. Kids, there's no more problems. All right. I know. We just did one like this, so I'm going to change it a little bit. I want to make this, think for a second, server. Make that a plus x. Plus 2x, there we go. Now, that's a new problem. X squared is less than or equal to 3 plus 2x. Solve. X squared minus 2x minus 3. Nice. And was that less than or greater than 0? Very good. Factors. Let's go with Paige. Do you have the factors for this?
Was it -3 and +1?
Can anybody verify that? You had the same thing? Okay, good. Then, I guess that's all we have time for. I will finish this up if you want to see it on the video. And you guys have a great day. These spots would work because it's less than or equal to 0. And I'm going to do a test interval now. I'm going to check the number 0. I'm going to put in a 0 here and here. That makes this negative times a positive, which is a negative, which is less than 0. So it worked. Yep, take care. Have a good one.
I couldn't find anything.
This didn't work. This doesn't work. And there's my answer between -1 and 3. Thanks for checking. And that's it. That's all I got for you for the lesson for today. You should do some homework. Have a great day.